What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do at least 3 times a week over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. As always, I'd like to pause for a moment to take just to pay gratitude to my listeners and my subscribers and followers. Can't thank y'all for the love and support enough. We've eclipsed millions of downloads courtesy of iHeartRadio over the last few months. And obviously, when it comes to our subscribers on YouTube, we've gone over 1.2 million. So I can't thank y'all enough for the love and support enough. Keep it coming. And I'm going to keep on coming. To continue to like and follow the show, just click the bell to get notified for all of our newest content. And you too shall consider yourself the latest member of the Stephen A. Smith Show family. And while you're doing that, please make sure to pick up a copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes, now in paperback. Just go to straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy. Once again, that's straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy. Let's get started with the NBA playoffs, right? I got a lot of stuff to get into, but I got to start with the NBA playoffs and the conclusion of the first round that we saw in Houston last night. That's where the Golden State Warriors beat the Houston Rockets 103-89 and advanced to the second round of the NBA playoffs, the semifinals of the Western Conference, that is, to face the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Warriors were led by Buddy Hield, who dropped 33 on the Rockets on 12 for 15 shooting, hit 9 3-pointers, by the way. I'll get to Houston and their future in just a moment, but I want to start off with Steph, Draymond, and this version of the Golden State Warriors by saying this. This brother, Steph Curry, 22 points and 50% shooting, 4 of 10 from 3, team high 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, played 46 of 48 minutes at the age of 37, scored 14 of his 22 points Game 7 in the fourth quarter, on 5 of 6 shooting from the field, okay? And him and Hield combined for 25 points on 82% shooting, 5 of 6 from 3 in the fourth quarter of Game 7 as well. So Curry, in Game 7s, his record is 4-2. And in those Game 7s, he's averaged 30.8 points per game on 42% shooting from three-point range. He's improved to 5-0 all-time in playoff series against the Houston Rockets. He's one of the greatest ever. We just can't say any longer that he's the greatest shooter God has ever created. He's one of the greatest ever. He's absolutely spectacular. No question about it. And he shows up in big moments when they count most. And he deserves a lot of credit for that, because I'm about to tell you somebody who doesn't in just a little bit. But before I get into that, let's give Draymond Green some props as well, not just because of his 16 points, not just because he started off the game hitting a couple of three-pointers, not just because he showed up in a Game 7 in a big moment yet again. It's because he's the same Draymond Green that spent All-Star Weekend guaranteeing the basketball world the Golden State Warriors are going to win the championship. And maybe they won't. In all likelihood, they won't. But he ain't dead. He ain't dead yet. He's still alive. Jimmy Butler didn't have to have that big of a game because he was deferential as he needed to be to Buddy Hield, who essentially played the role of Klay Thompson. Because if you remember Klay Thompson when he dropped 41 against OKC in the playoffs many years back, if you can remember that Klay Thompson had dropped 37 points in one quarter one time, if you remember that marksman wizard that departed from the Golden State Warriors last year to join the Dallas Mavericks, you were wondering what were the Golden State Warriors going to do in the absence of a Klay Thompson. Brzezinski, as good as he is, he ain't Klay. But somebody who looked like Klay last night was Buddy Hield. He was spectacular. Biggest game of his career, easily so. And he deserves a lot of credit and a lot of props for the job that he put forth. Having said all of that, I want to go to Houston and Jalen Green. Fred VanVleet, major props to him. Player option on his deal this summer. Houston will in all likelihood will keep him. But the bottom line is we got to get to Houston in this regard. They came into the playoffs as the second seed out west and lost to Golden State. They've got a young squad and are well coached by Ime Udoka. Okay? However, that clearly wasn't enough as the Rockets struggled to find a consistent scorer throughout the first round. Why am I bringing that up? Because you can't talk about the Houston Rockets today without talking about Jalen Green. I know he's young, but he ain't ready. He ain't ready. And, you know, I was disappointed. Ladies and gentlemen, You can't be a 20-point per game scorer in the face of your franchise. And in 6 of the 7 games that you play as the primary scorer, you score 7, 9, 8, 11, 12, and 8. That's not the face of a franchise. Now, he had 38 points a game too, but that's when Jimmy Butler got hurt and went down. I mean, Jimmy Butler might as well have been Freddy Krueger or Jason from Friday the 13th, because that's how Jalen Green looked in 6 of the 7 games, which is why the Houston Rockets have to prioritize going out and getting Kevin Durant from Phoenix. You got a couple of picks. You got a few players, whether it's Jalen Green with Jabari Smith and a couple of Easton or somebody else. You got to go out and get Kevin Durant. You know that 27-point per game scorer? One of the most prolific scorers ever who's ever existed in NBA history. That brother, who would be coached by Ime Udoka, who would be backed up by the Van Vliets and the Amen Thompsons of the world, who's going to be a stud, that second-year player, or Shagun. That brother, you need Kevin Durant, and you need him bad. You got Steven Adams, one of his former teammates, already there. You add Kevin Durant to that mix with him and Shagun, all right? With Amen Thompson, with Ime Udoka coaching them, they could make some noise, even in the Western Conference. I know there's people out there saying, why Houston? Why not Detroit in the Eastern Conference? It's an easier path to the finals. Fair enough. But if Kevin Durant got to be out west and he got to go to Houston and be coached by Ime Udoka, I think Ime Udoka is a Kevin Durant caliber scorer away from winning the championship. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. And to be honest with you, even though I picked Golden State to win the series in 7 games, I'm so very glad that they did, because I don't want to see Houston against Minnesota. Houston has a difficult time scoring. They can't shoot the three. They can't shoot perimeter shots, really. If they're not making layups, they ain't doing anything. They got to play up-tempo. They got to push the pace, and they got to make layups. They ain't even reliable at the free throw line. You need Kevin Durant badly. Or a Devin Booker. I'm just saying, I know Phoenix ain't giving up Devin Booker. But that's what you need. It really, really is. And let's see if they get it. Let me transition to my next subject because it's uncomfortable but necessary. I want to talk about one more team that lost this weekend, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers lost Game 7 to the Denver Nuggets on Saturday, 120-101. It wasn't even that close, okay? It wasn't even that close. They were down by as much as 35. Let's get that out the way. And if you think that was bad, don't let me get started with James Harden, who was a no-show yet again for the Clippers. Harden, mostly guarded by Christian Braun, I might add. I'm sitting down when I say this. He was held to 7 points on 2 of 8 shooting. Harden now holds a 3-4 career record in Game 7s with each of his losses to a different team. He's lost 4 Game 7s with 4 different teams. His last win came in a bubble with the Houston Rockets in 2020. Now, Harden left Denver on Saturday night without speaking to the media. No surprise there. That's usually what he does, and that's on him. But I got to tell you something right now. It's so bad, it's hard to really, really put into words. Because when I think about Harden, here's what I want y'all to know. James Harden played 35 minutes, attempted 8 shots. The Clippers were outscored by 29 points with Harden on the court. He's now lost 4 of his last 5 playoff series overall. His combined game for the last 4 Game 7s James Harden has played with, he has a combined 1-3 record, 3 straight losses, 13.8 points per game, 14 of 51 field goals, that's 27%, 5 of 30 from three-point range, that's 17%. This is James Harden. This is a dude that averaged 30 in his sleep for years. This is a dude that won the league scoring title, won a league MVP, won multiple scoring titles, won a league MVP. Ladies and gentlemen, in Game 7s, he's attempting 51 shots in 4 games. Can somebody explain that? That doesn't even equate to 13 shots a game. How is that possible? 27%? From the field, 17% from three-point range. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a choke job. When Game 7s arrive, James Harden's nowhere to be found. Wasn't. with Houston years ago against Golden State, wasn't with Philly a couple of years back when he was in Philly with Doc Rivers against Boston, wasn't this past Saturday night. A blowout, an annihilation, an ass kicking? Now, it wasn't just him. Kawhi Leonard, who scored over 20 every single game, wasn't his greatest self, but wasn't awful. But, he was like a minus 31 on the court. Zubac and others, Norm Powell didn't have the greatest game, didn't have a good game at all. I get that part. But James Harden, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not talking about the 8 points or the 7 points. I'm talking about the shot attempts. How in the hell do you take just 8 shots in a game 7 if you're James Harden? That's like hot piece of butter. Hot piece of butter. That's what that's about. I don't want the ball. Okay, give the ball to somebody else. What's that about? I mean, that's a crying damn shame. He's almost played for as many teams, 4 as he's won playoff series, 5, since last reaching the conference finals in 2018. In the last 7 years, he's played for as many teams, almost as many teams as playoff series he's won. I just don't know what to say about it anymore. And I feel so sorry for Steve Ballmer, a billionaire. You got a new arena. You let Paul George walk away. You invest in Kawhi and James Harden. And James Harden balls out until the playoffs arrive. And then balled out in game 6. Bust their living, had about 28. Had about 28. And then show up in the game 7 in Denver. And it was like you didn't recognize him. Like he's allergic to game 7. You know what they're going to start? They're going to come up with a fever. It's going to call James Harden fever. Are you going to show up in the game 7 or you going to have James Harden fever? That's what it's going to amount to. And that's the crying shame of it all. I can't even emphasize how disappointed I was in the way that he played. I just threw up my hands like, oh, shit. Damn. Once again, I got fooled thinking the brother was going to show up for a game 7. And he didn't. I don't know where the Clippers go from here. But the legitimate question to be asked is, what difference does it make if you know that all the man's going to do is show up in the playoffs and wet the bed? I got mad respect for James Harden. I think he's an incredible player. I think he's a future Hall of Famer. But you can't have these blemishes on your resume. My man Big Perk was on First Take this morning, my day job on ESPN, every weekday from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Standard Time. He was like, man, I was tripping. I talked about the best off guards in the history of basketball. I said Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. I had James Harden, number 3, ahead of Dwayne Wade. I was tripping. That's what Big Perk said. He said because after watching James Harden flop in yet another Game 7 performance, he can't believe he ever thought to put him ahead of D. Wade. And that's correct. Because D. Wade showed up for Game 7s. But for some reason, this man is allergic to doing so. And I don't think James Harden's reputation ever recovers from this. It's, short of a championship, I don't see how it happens. I really, really, really don't. Coming up, President Trump proposes a 100% tariff on all films made outside of the United States, and stocks tumble for some of the biggest studios and streaming services. I'll get into what it all means straight ahead, but first, jury selection begins in the federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial for Sean Diddy Combs. We've got the latest on the trial that could send Diddy to prison for life. By the way, as an aside, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves beating the Golden State Warriors in 6. Stephen A. Smith Show coming your way. I'm going away. Back with more in a minute. All right, folks, I need you all to stop what you're doing and listen up. You know I love this time of year, right? The NBA playoffs are in full effect. And with all this action jumping off, the Stephen A. Smith Show wants to make sure you take advantage of it all. That's why we've partnered with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. The app is easy to use. Just pick more or less than a few player stats, and you can win up to 2,000 times your cash on a single lineup. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use promo promo code SAS and download the app now, please. Again, download the app and use code SAS to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prospects, hey, run your game. It's orange and blue skies, baby, orange and blue skies. My beloved New York Knicks have advanced to the second round of the NBA playoffs. So I'll give you my picks for tonight's matchup between the Knicks and the defending NBA champions, the Boston Celtics. Let's go for it. First up, will Jalen Brunson score more or less than 27.5 points? Yes, he's healthy. He's rested. The ball is in his hands. Obviously, he gives anybody problems who's guarding against him. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to have the green light. He's going to be the number one option, and he can create a shot for his own self, whether it's jump shots, whether it's getting into the lane, get to the free throw line, etc. Do I see him scoring more than 27.5 points in this game? The answer is yes. I'm going with more. Next up, will Karl Anthony Towns score more or less than 20.5 points? My answer is yes, even though he's averaged less than that in the 4 regular season games against the Celtics this year. I would say yes. I'm going with more, because he damn well had better do it. With his size 21 feet, with his questionable legs, I don't give a damn. He's still a self-proclaimed best shooting big man in basketball, okay? The brother's been shooting over 50% from the field and from three-point range in the 4 games he's played against Boston this year. Don't stop now. Ain't no stopping it now. Do it, okay? Because the Knicks need all the help they can get against the Boston Celtics. Next, will Mr. Jason Tatum score more or less than 27.5 points? Why would I say otherwise when he's averaging 34 against the Knicks this year? And they're clearly the better team. I'm going to go with more on this because Jason Tatum is that dude and the Boston Celtics are a better team and the New York Knicks defense ain't what it used to be. All of those things coupled together, Jason Tatum should easily score more than 27.5 points, and I believe he will. And finally, will Jaylen Brown score more or less than 21.5 points? I'm going to go with more because it ain't hard to do. Okay, it's what he can do on any given night with relative ease, especially against this Knicks defense. I'm going to go with more for him as well. So there you have it. Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. More, because that's what prize picks like to do. You say more, that means more money in your pocket. At least some people would like to believe that. It's usually true, though. Prize picks will get you paid. Trust me on that. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Let's get to New York, where jury selection began today in a federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Federal prosecutors allege Combs used his power and wealth to sexually abuse, coerce, and exploit alleged victims for decades. If convicted, Combs would be spending the rest of his life in federal prison. Defense attorneys for Combs contend that all of his sexual encounters were consensual and have described the music mogul as a swinger who invited third parties into his bedroom. Last week, federal prosecutors offered Combs a chance to plead guilty for a reduced sentence. He turned down that offer. Joining us now, obviously, to discuss the trial is Ellie Honig, legal analyst for CNN, who's been on this show many times, one of our favorites. What's up, Ellie? How are you, man? How's everything?
Stephen, this is going to be a fascinating trial. This is the courthouse I used to practice in, so I can bring you inside the huddle on this one.
Well, I can't wait for you to do that. First things first, him turning down a plea deal for a lesser charge, is that something to be expected? Should that be considered a surprise? What do you make of that?
You know, it's an interesting little bit of last-minute gamesmanship here. It's not that uncommon for prosecutors to make an offer on the eve of trial. Now, the big question is, what were they offering, right? It's one thing if they were offering him 12 years. It's another thing if they were offering him 3 years or something like that. The fact that he said no, I guess it depends, again, on what the offer is, but he's dug in. Look, he appears to believe he's got a shot at winning this trial. Otherwise, he would have taken that plea, because the downside here, if he loses this trial, Stephen, he's going to get 15 years minimum. And as you said before, up to life. So Sean Combs and his lawyer must have sat down and said, look, there's a chance to get out of this for less, but they're comfortable rolling the dice. Those are very high consequence dice to roll, though.
Let's get to the jury selection, Ellie, which obviously started today. How long should we expect this process to take place?
So this is federal court. Federal jury selection is way quicker than state jury selection, right? We've seen state cases drag on for weeks and weeks and weeks. I have had juries selected in multiple murder cases in 2 days or so. Now, we have the complication in this case that everybody knows the defendant. Everyone who comes in there as a prospective juror will have at least heard something about Sean Combs, about Diddy. So that takes longer to wade through. I am certain we will have a jury by the end of the week. If I had to guess, I would say we'll have one by Wednesday. Federal court moves pretty quick when it comes to jury selection.
Given the charges federal prosecutors levied against Diddy, what type of jury should his defense team want to see actually?
So this is where the gamesmanship comes in, Stephen. I'll never forget something that when I was a young prosecutor, a veteran defense lawyer who'd been practicing 40, 50 years said to me something like, jury selection isn't just a big deal, it's the whole ballgame. I mean, these are the people who decide the case. Now, let's think about this from the defense side. Like you said, you're Sean Combs' lawyer. What are you worried about here? To me, it's pretty obvious. You want to avoid anyone who A, knows about this case, mostly everyone does, and B, just has their mind made up, has already come to some sort of judgment. There will be many, many questions asked of the jurors, the potential jurors. Have you heard about this case?
Right.
Have you formed any opinions? Could you still consider the evidence fairly? But look, the fact of the matter is this case has gotten an enormous amount of publicity. Sean Combs, since the indictment came down, has been the subject of all sorts of criticism, of jokes in the media. And I would be looking out for people who already had their minds made up against him and could not come in there and judge the case fairly and impartially. But the catch, though, Stephen, is a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, I could be fair and impartial. I could put aside everything I've heard. But this is where your gut instinct comes in as a lawyer. I tried a case against John Gotti Jr., right? Everyone had heard of the guy.
Okay.
A lot of jurors said, oh, I could be fair. But then it gets into that gut. Like, do I believe him? Am I sensing something weird that I don't think this person could be impartial? So defense is looking for people who've already convicted the guy.
But defense is also looking for people who know little to nothing about the case. I would imagine.
Yeah.
How plausible is that in considering how high profile he is, that people don't have foregone conclusions because they're completely oblivious to what's going on?
Right. So you'd be amazed the types of answers you get from these potential jurors who sometimes like have barely heard of things. I think everyone's going to have to say they've heard of the guy. I imagine 90% of the people will know, well, I know he was in some trouble, but I actually think you're right. I don't think that many people are going to say, well, I know he's charged with racketeering and sex trafficking and all that. I think they're going to just basically come down to, well, I know he got arrested. I know he's in trouble. I know it has something to do with sex and coercion and that kind of thing. So that's going to be a key question. How much do you know about this case? How much do you know about the charges? Have you read the indictment? Have you seen this story covered on CNN, on Stephen A's show? And you're just, it's a guessing game, right? It really does come down to your instinct. But yeah, if I'm the defense, I would want someone who knows less about the case. But on the other hand, if you get someone who's like, I've never heard of this guy, I've never heard of the case, then you start wondering, like, is there something off about this juror? And maybe I don't want that.
What about the defense team from this perspective? They've described the music mogul as a swinger who invited third parties into his bedroom. I'm like, is that a detail that you wanted to just let out as a defense team? I don't know what to make of that. What say you?
Third parties and fourth parties and fifth parties and sixth parties, apparently. But that is going to be the defense. And look, I know it's maybe not the greatest PR move in the world, but it's a viable defense. And I think this will be the core of the defense. It'll boil down to maybe he's a freak, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, but there's no federal crime of being a freak. There's no federal crime of having these sort of aggressive, unusual sexual appetites. But going hand in hand with that, that's not going to be enough on its own, because you're going to have victims and witnesses testifying who say he coerced me, he threatened me, he assaulted me. And so they're going to have to combine that, maybe he's a swinger, but that's not a crime, with an attack on the victims in the courtroom. They're going to have to suggest that these victims, these witnesses, have bad motives. They're looking for a payday. They made up stories about him. It became a pile on, and they all sort of picked up on each other's stories. And that's a common defense you see in these sort of multi-victim, multi-witness cases. So I think that's exactly what the defense is going to be.
Since the last time you were on here weeks ago, has there been anything additional as it pertains to information or findings that have transpired over the last few weeks that you find potentially alarming or potentially beneficial to the Diddy case itself?
Yeah, I've actually been surprised the other way, Stephen, which is I thought there would be more victims that are charged in the indictment. I thought there would be more expanded charges. Now, prosecutors have tweaked this indictment up a little bit. They now reference victim 1 and victim 2 in the indictment. Apparently, there's going to be a third victim as well. But given the number of civil suits, the dozens of civil suits, I thought that at some point the prosecution would either be A, adding more and more victims than they did, and B, adding more and more defendants. This is a very unusual case in that the charge is racketeering, which means in this case, they're charging Sean Combs with being at the head, running a criminal enterprise, yet he's the only defendant. Now, you can do that. R. Kelly is another example of a guy who was a one-man racketeering enterprise. But look, I used to charge racketeering cases. I used to teach the course on racketeering within DOJ. My racketeering cases were mob cases. There's 25 guys, 28 guys, 15 guys. So it's unusual and I think a bit surprising to me that the original indictment has more or less remained intact. I would have expected, I think I said to you, Stephen A., back at the time, I thought that there was going to be bigger expansions of this indictment than there were.
And because there aren't, is that an argument the defense makes in his favor? Where are the other defendants? How come he's the only guy that's really being prosecuted here? Why is it that you haven't been able to find anybody else since you're accusing him of racketeering?
Oh, you bet. They're going to make some variation of that argument. They're going to go, oh my goodness, folks, a racketeering enterprise. There must be a lot of people involved. Well, folks, guess what? They say he's the whole thing. How about all these other guys? How about these bodyguards? How about these handlers? How about these enablers? Now, some of them will testify. Some of them have been given deals. They've been given immunity or they've been given non-prosecution agreements. So some of these people are going to get on the stand and say, yes, I was part of this. Yes, I helped him out. But in exchange for my testimony, I've been given a free pass. Now, you know what the counter to that is going to be. They got a sweet deal because they're just telling prosecutors whatever prosecutors want to hear. But it's not uncommon. I mean, I made more cooperation deals than I could even remember. So, yeah, that's absolutely going to be a dynamic at this trial. He's the only one. They say this is a one-man show. You shouldn't believe that, members of the jury.
What about the video, Cassie Ventura, his ex-girlfriend, where he ran down the hallway half naked and dragged her, threw her to the ground, kicked her, and all of that stuff? We saw that video. First of all, we don't know. I'd like to know whether you believe that's going to be admissible in this court case, number one. And number two, the fact that she's agreed to testify against him, according to the reports. How damning do you believe there is the potential for that to be?
I think that video is the prosecution's single most important and most powerful piece of evidence. It will come in, by the way. That was the subject of a pretrial ruling. The judge said, yes, you may play the video. Now, the question is going to be, what's the relevance? What's the context around it? It appears the prosecutors are going to argue this was part of him threatening, forcing, coercing, abusing this woman as part of his effort to traffic her across state lines for sexual purposes. Apparently, the defense is going to be, no, this had nothing to do with the sex trafficking ring or coercion. This was a fight they were having over infidelity. And, you know, I think Cassandra will be the most important witness for the prosecution. But the attack on her is going to be, she's a liar. She's telling them what they want to hear. She's looking to raise her own profile. She's got a bad financial incentive. And so, look, so much of this just comes down to the jurors are going to be sitting feet away from her. I mean, I've been in these courtrooms. They're going to be 4 feet away from her. And so much of it is just going to come down to how they assess her demeanor. What does she look like? How does she deliver her answers? Is she credible? From what I've seen of her in public, she seems quite credible to me. But people don't always play the same on the witness stand as they do in front of a camera.
What about the documentaries and stuff like that that have been put out about him and some of the allegations against him and people essentially co-signing on what he's being accused of because they're highlighting his behavior or what it was throughout these years? How much of an impact, if any at all, do you expect that to have?
So prosecutors cannot obviously just play the documentaries or pieces of the documentaries
Of
for the jurors, right? That would be inadmissible. However, if there's a witness on the stand who has previously spoken in one of these documentaries, and there will be many of those, everything they've said previously can be used to cross-examine them, to impeach them, as we say. So if a witness gets on the stand and says something a little different than what he or she said in a documentary, or leaves out a detail or adds a detail that they didn't say in the documentary, then that's absolutely fair game for cross-examination. And I assume in this case, if the prosecutors are any good at their jobs, and I'm sure they are, it's my former office, they have not just whatever the documentaries are, but the raw footage that came before it. Because a lot of times, you know, you'll do a 2-hour interview and it'll end up being 12 minutes on the documentary. So I assure you both sides have watched that footage very carefully. And it's all in play, just the same if it was prior testimony, to a police officer in front of a grand jury. It can be used.
You've raved about your former place of occupation, Southern District of New York, and what it brings to the table in terms of its high conviction rate, et cetera, et cetera. You still feeling as confident in their case, considering their reputation and what they bring to the table? You still feeling as confident with the whole Diddy, with this whole Diddy matter against them?
That's a great question. So I of course, look, I came up through this office. I have a reverence for it, but I certainly do not think the SDNY is infallible. They've made a lot of missteps,
Sure.
including most recently, I think, throwing out the Eric Adams case, which I know a lot of the people there pushed back and disagreed with, but that came from up above. No, look, I think the case is a sound case looking at the indictment. I think the hype around it, and maybe the SDNY helped promote this hype, got a little beyond what actually ended up happening. But look, the odds are stacked against any criminal defendant in that courthouse. You'll see that conviction rates are 98%. Throw those out because that includes guilty pleas, which almost every case pleads guilty.
Okay.
There are no reliable data on how many trials result in conviction. But in my experience and just following that courthouse, 70, 80% or so of all trials result in conviction. I don't think Sean Combs is going to cut a sympathetic figure here for the jury. I think they're going to hear some horrible things about him. I think the witnesses are going to present some devastating testimony. I think that video that we talked about of the assault is really, really damaging evidence. So I would put it, if I had to make a pick here, I would say 75, 80% that he gets convicted.
Last question. Is he better off or worse off now than he was when he was first arrested as it pertains to this case and how he's looking?
Well, I think he's slightly better off in that it hasn't been this explosion in the number of witnesses. But look, it could get a lot worse. I mean, he was given that plea offer. Again, we don't know what it was, but he was given a chance to sort of hedge his bets and mitigate his bottom line loss here. And he chose not to do it. And the way these trials work, it's a flip of a coin. It's yes or no. The jury can't come down and say, well, we want to kind of convict him, but if some, they can split the verdict. I guess I should say that. They can convict him on some counts, but not others. But man, if he gets convicted on anything in this case, he's looking at double digits plus behind bars. So he's taking, look, it's a huge gamble. It's terrifying for anybody to be in that position. I've seen a lot of people go through it. The odds are against him. He has a very good defense team behind him. So anything can happen, but his life is on the line here.
Forgive me, I got one more question I just thought about. If your case is that strong, if you're the Southern District of New York and your case is that strong, why offer him a plea?
So it could be that they don't think it could be that they're worried about some aspect of their case. It could be they're worried about one of the witnesses or the victims. It also could be, look, the reason you offer a plea deal when you have a strong case, especially on the eve of trial, is A, you might be worried about some aspect of your case, or B, you're just trying to, again, cap your risks. You lock in a conviction, you move on to sentencing. And let's keep in mind, there's always a risk, Stephen A., of what we call jury nullification, which means when the jury or a single juror just says, I don't really care what the evidence is, I'm going to vote not guilty. And all you need is one. If you're the defense, right? You need all 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt to convict. So you get one person on that panel who says, I don't know, I don't believe some of these victims, or I feel bad for Sean Combs. I feel like he's been railroaded. Racial issues could come into play here. You have a black man sitting at the defense table. So a celebrity, a universally known guy. So my fear going into this as the prosecutors would not so much be of an acquittal. I don't think you're going to get 12-0 not guilty, but you never know. In a high profile cases hang. And then that's a win, essentially, for the defense. You can always retry a hung jury, but it's a nightmare for prosecutors. So it may have been, they said, look, if we can lock in a conviction, get X as the penalty, avoid the time and expense of trial, and avoid the risk of a hung jury, maybe they calculated that would have been worth it.
This case is not going to be televised or anything like that, right? I mean, cameras are not going to be in the court, allowed in the courtroom or anything, right? Is that correct?
Right. Federal courts are dinosaurs. They refuse to allow not only cameras, but even live audio feeds. Even the Supreme Court, by the way, gives us live audio feed now, but they are old-fashioned. Wow. I am on this soapbox, Stephen A. They need to let cameras in there. The Constitution says public trial. Why are we acting like it's 1840? Show it. We can all watch it. We should get to see it.
Elie Honig, senior legal analyst for CNN, one of the best in the business. It'll be much-watched television whenever you're on. I can promise you that. Thank you, Elie, man. I really appreciate it, man. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, Stephen A. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Coming up, Caitlin Clark returns to Iowa and puts on a show. I'll get into that straight ahead. But first, President Trump wants to impose a 100% tariff on films made outside the United States. What's up with that? We'll talk about it. I'll explain its significance in just a minute. You're watching the Stephen A. Smith Show. Don't go away. Back with more in a minute. All right, everybody, listen up. With all the big-time sports action that's happening each and every day, the Stephen A. Smith Show wants to make sure you are taking advantage of it all. That's why we've partnered with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. The app is really easy to use. To make a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few player stats. Choose from any of your favorite players, Luka Doncic, Jimmy Butler, and Zach LaVine, all in the same entry. Then sit back and watch. The list is absolutely endless. You can play Prize Picks in over 40 states, including California and Texas. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50. Just use promo code SAS and download Prize Picks right now. Again, download the app and use code SAS to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Now let's get to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where President Donald Trump has his sights evidently turned towards Hollywood. The president says the American movie industry was dying a very fast death due to incentives provided by other countries to shoot outside the United States. As a result, Trump announced an intent to impose 100% tariffs on the industry for films made outside the country. The president went to Truth Social with the following post, quote, "This is a concerted effort by other nations and therefore a national security threat. It is, in addition to everything else, messaging and propaganda," end quote. The president continued saying he was authorizing the relevant government agencies, such as the Department of Commerce, to begin the process of imposing a 100% tariff on all films produced abroad, end quote. That's what the president said, okay? And we understand this. Here's what I want everybody to recognize. We can parse words all we want to. But in the end, the president, one could easily surmise this is just his latest element in the revenge tour that he is on. Anybody that has been against him, anybody that has vilified him, anybody that has tried to castigate him along the way, he's coming for you and he's sparing virtually no one. Now, why would I say this about the movie industry? Are you kidding me? Have you seen Hollywood? Have you looked at how a vast majority of folks in Hollywood have spoken out against him? I mean, think about that. Think about the concerted effort that was put forth to support the likes of Kamala Harris. Think about how that support, how flagrantly it emanated from Hollywood. Not everyone in Hollywood, of course, but certainly enough people where you could basically say the industry itself. Did you see Megyn Kelly go off about George Clooney weeks ago? Did you see her dissect him and pick him apart like a fine-tooth comb when he tried to denigrate her in some way, at least in her eyes? Have you heard the reports of Biden and how Clooney ultimately came out calling for him to step down weeks later, but he was quiet up until that point? We've seen a plethora of people emanating out of Hollywood. And the belief by and large is that it's not just the actors, but it's the studios themselves. And it doesn't escape me. It doesn't fly over my head one bit that this is the kind of thing that Trump would do. Because he's talking about make America great again, make the American film industry great again. And he's making a legitimate argument when you take into account what he's pointing to in terms of businesses being taken elsewhere, because he's going to have an abundance of American citizens that are totally for him in this regard. I'm putting on my glasses so I can make sure that I can read carefully. President Donald Trump proposed on Sunday a 100% tariff on films produced outside the United States. The move has made investors of major U.S. streamers and studios nervous, and stocks for companies like Netflix and Paramount slid because of it. Analysts warned the tariff, though not finalized, would lead to fewer and more expensive films. You think Trump doesn't know that? I'm going to continue reading from here. It talks about here, share prices of major studios and streaming companies slid following the news, with Netflix shares trading down 1.5% midday on Monday, and Paramount shares dipping about 0.7%. Disney and Universal parent company Comcast slumped in pre-market trading Monday before mostly bouncing back to their respective prices at Friday's close. This is all from last week. Trump said in a Sunday social media post he plans to implement taxes on foreign films as a means to prevent the U.S. movie industry, quote, from dying a very fast death. Think about what he's saying. U.S. studios have increasingly turned to shooting projects overseas. Think about what he's pointing to. Shooting projects overseas is a means of taking advantage of tax benefits or finding unique locations for films for television sets. Netflix announced in February plans to invest $1 billion to produce films and series in Mexico over the next 4 years. According to a report from entertainment industry consultancy Allsberg SPI, 36 European countries and 15 Asian countries offered film production incentives in 2024, up from 17 European countries and 7 Asian countries offering tax credits and rebates in 2017. So his argument is going to be they're taking their business elsewhere. We've got to compel them to do business right here in the United States. One of the ways to do that is to put these tariffs on content produced outside of the U.S., and as a result, you're going to have people that are going to engage rather than reciprocation. They may do the same thing to the movie industry. He's not blind to that fact. He doesn't seem to care. And if you say, hey, okay, then I'm going to do business here in America, that doesn't mean you're going to get the tax breaks that are available to you at other places, which means that if you're Hollywood, you're going to be producing less content. Studios are going to be green-lighting less projects. As a result, less people are going to be working. As a result, their bottom lines are going to be compromised. And Hollywood, as a result, collectively is going to be compromised because of it. You don't think Trump knows that? Let me veer totally left. The other day, a news report came out. And contrary to the impression that it gave, it wasn't Trump going back on his words to me when I did News Nation last Wednesday night and I asked him about HBCUs. And he said, you don't need to be concerned at all, Stephen. I love the blacks. I love the black people, historically black colleges and universities. I love them. They love me. They have nothing to worry about them. I saved them, Stephen. I saved them. Remember that? That's what he said. And then a story came out about Howard University and how they were looking forward to about $64 to $65 million and in terms of discretionary funding and limiting that or minimizing that. The Trump administration was proposing them not getting that 64 to 65 million. And everybody was in an uproar. He promised one thing and he did another. When in fact, the real story behind it was that it was supposed to be a one-time payment for their hospital. And since the hospital hasn't been completed, that's not something the Trump administration feels the need to provide. Or it has been completed. Since it has been completed, what do you need the money for? That's what he's asking. That's not the same as minimizing funding that was promised to them. So we have to be accurate about that. But my point in saying all of that is this. He still could have given it to them if he wanted to. But according to my sources, he doesn't like the board at Howard University. He doesn't appreciate the way they have treated him, according to sources close to Trump. And because of that, he doesn't particularly like them. And if he doesn't like them, he's not going to do them any favors. That's how this works. At some point in time, you can lament it all day. I've got people that work for me that lament that kind of stuff. They think the behavior is juvenile, it's excessive, it's uncalled for, it's beneath the presidency of the United States, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't care. And that's exactly why you have to make a decision. Either if you're an elected politician, listen to me, Michael. Either you're an elected politician, listen to me, Sherry. You're either whether you're an elected politician or you're somebody that's going to have to do business with him, you're going to have to recognize you're going to have to appease him to some degree. You're going to have to do that. I've been critical of him for years. But he was nice on News Nation. You know why? I said, good evening, Mr. President. Good to talk to you. Something as simple as that. Remember when he was at the NABJ, National Association for Black Journalists over the summer? And Rachel Scott did a phenomenal job interviewing her. She asked the right questions. She asked the questions that people wanted to know. But what did Trump say? That's just a nasty, nasty question. You didn't even say hello. How are you?
You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you?
See what I'm saying? You don't even say, hello, how are you? It matters to him. And that's not to say that there's a reason or justification for doing any of the things that he may have done or will continue to do. It's just knowing the hand that you're dealt and knowing who you're dealing with. And that's what you're going to have to learn about him, if you don't already know. If you want to do business with him, you're going to have to make sure that you're ready to engage in some level of capitulation, even if it's something as simple as being well-mannered. If you are an elected official and you have to work on behalf of your constituency and you're going to have to cross that aisle, it can't be imitating Mitch McConnell when Barack Obama was in office and he said our goal here is to make him a one-term president. That's not going to fly with this guy. He's got the House, he's got the Senate, he's got the White House. He's got the Supreme Court. 6-3 majority. You're going to have to figure out a way to do something to get a semblance of what you want. That is the way that it goes, whether you like it or not. And this thing with Hollywood is the latest example. Somehow, some way, the 100% tariffs that he's proposing, studios in Hollywood are going to have to get connected to the White House, and they're going to have to throw him a bone, figuratively speaking, to do business with him and to get him to back off for some of the things that they're interested in him ignoring. He knows that. It's an effort to squeeze the opposition, which is what he considers Hollywood. Make no mistake about that. In my opinion, that's all this is. It's going to compel Hollywood to want to reach out to him, to ask him for some kind of favor in an effort to show them some grace so they can march forward with their business as usual approach. And in return, they're going to have to give up something. I don't know what that is. I just know it's Trump. If I know it, how the hell don't they know it? Which is why it might have behooved them to lay low, be silent, and just shut the hell up and go to the polls and vote for somebody else, as opposed to being so conspicuous and flagrant in their dissent against him. Same industry that want to guard every single little interview that you do to make sure that you don't utter a negative syllable that can compromise them at the box office, was out there gung-ho against them in a very public way. You didn't think that was going to come back to bite you? I'm just saying, I'm speaking logic. That's all, just simple logic. To me, that's what this is about, in my humble opinion. I don't give a damn what Trump says. That's what this is about. I don't give a damn about inconveniencing them. They inconvenienced me. It's their turn to suffer. That's how it goes. Before we get to your tweets, I want to give a quick shout out to Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, who hosted the Brazilian national team in Iowa yesterday. The event was a sold-out homecoming for Clark as the WNBA preseason tipped off this weekend. The Indiana Fever beat the Brazilian team 108-44, capped off by Clark making a 36-foot three-pointer, okay? That was the same spot on the court that has her number 22 logo affixed, and the same spot where she broke the NCAA women's basketball career scoring record last year. She finished the exhibition game Sunday with 16 points, 5 assists, and 6 rebounds. Caitlin Clark is the real deal. Let me get that out the way first. I got a lot of respect, a lot of love for this young lady. I think she's spectacular. I think she's box office. I think she should have been easily embraced. And that wasn't the case last year. Just to remind y'all who she is, I'm just going to read off some numbers because you see, this year she's going to be better. Last year as a rookie, fresh off of going to the national championship game and losing to South Carolina, and then playing less than 2 months later, her first professional season. As a WNBA rookie, she was the unanimous Rookie of the Year. She was an all-WNBA first teamer. She finished 4th in league MVP voting. She started all 40 regular season games for the Fever and had a groundbreaking year marked by numerous WNBA records. She finished the regular season leading rookies in scoring, field goals made, three-point field goals made, assists, steals, and minutes played. She ended up setting regular season WNBA records for assists in the season with 337 points scored or assisted on in a season with 1,520, points by a rookie with 769, and three-point field goals by a rookie with 122. By the way, she was box office, sold out more than anybody, helped massively increase WNBA ratings. And the only thing stupid that happened with her is Team USA not putting her on the damn team. She's that special, ladies and gentlemen. And that was year one. This time around, she's got more rest. And she had an entire offseason to prepare for this full WNBA season that's about to come on. She's special. She's special. And oh, by the way, Paige Beckers from UConn, who's now in Dallas, even though her team may not be that good, she's going to be special too. And I can't wait until my girl Juju Watkins comes out of college, because when she gets herself healthy and she's on the pro level, look the hell out, because she is spectacular. I can't wait till she gets to the WNBA. WNBA is it. It's it. It's worthy of being talked about on an everyday basis. To my girl Shanae Ogumake from ESPN, Andrea Carter from ESPN. Are you happy now? I'm talking about the end of the WNBA, even though I've been talking about it, Shanae. She keep telling me, y'all, I gotta get to the game. When you gonna get to the game, Steve? When you gonna get to the game? Well, I need a courtside seat. I was at a couple of NBA games over the last couple of weeks. I sat courtside for both games. How come I'm having trouble getting a courtside seat to WNBA games, but I ain't got no trouble getting a courtside seat to NBA games? It's not like I'm looking for it for free. I'm willing to pay for it. I'm just saying. Before I get to your tweets, I want to start with Giants rookie linebacker Abdul Carter, who evidently has no shame in asking NFL legends for their jersey number. After being drafted by the Giants 3rd overall, he said he wanted to wear number 56. The retired number of Giants legend LT himself, Lawrence Taylor. Taylor quickly rejected that request, saying, quote, get another number, end quote. Carter then tweeted, quote, the worst thing he could say was no. My stance don't change. LT is the GOAT. Nothing but respect. This just gonna make me work even harder. I love it, end quote. After that rejection, Carter then moved on to his number at Penn State, number 11, retired by the Giants in honor of quarterback Phil Simms. While Simms said he would have given the okay, he was ultimately outvoted by members of his family and rejected Carter's request as well, about which Carter tweeted, quote, damn, at this point, I'm going to be out there with just my last name on my jersey. No number. JK, it's all love. Just want to play football, end quote. Actually, Abdul Carter, you're lying. You don't just want to play football. You want the number that you want. It's not a crime. But Abdul Carter, because I'm quite sure you're going to be great because you're a baller. And somebody said you were right next to me at the Knicks game. I didn't even notice you, my man. My bad. My apologies. Let me say this to you. I want you to imagine, Abdul Carter, although I totally believe you when you say it was out of respect. Because why would you want to wear the number of a scrub? Why would you want to wear the number of an average player? Of course, you're respecting the individuals whose numbers you reached out to grab. You know, in Phil Simms' case, to a lesser degree, because that's just the number you wore in college, whereas with LT, it was out of respect for his greatness with you playing that position. I'm quite sure it was out of respect, but Abdul Carter, respectfully, just imagine that you played 15 to 20 years in the National Football League. Imagine that you recorded over 132 sacks. Imagine that with the great linebackers in NFL history, the Dick Butkuses of the world and others, you know, the Jack Hams, Jack Lamberts of the world, and so many others, the Ray Lewises of the world, the Ronnie Lotts of the world. The list goes on and on. Imagine you yourself have that kind of career spanning 15 to 20 years. And a rookie who's never played a game calls you after all of those years of greatness and service, which warranted your number being retired and raised to the rafters of a stadium, and lives in the franchise lore, that somebody who's never played a game came to you and said, can I wear your number? You sure you would feel good about that? You know they respect you because your number's retired and you earned it. But you wouldn't feel some kind of way about somebody who's never played a game asking you for that? Asking you for the right to unretire their number so you could wear it, and you've never played a game and you've never proven a damn thing on a professional football field? I need you to think about it that way, bro. Get your own number. Make your own way. And then get that number retired. And see how you would feel if somebody came and asked you to have the number lowered from the rafters just so they could wear it when they've never played a game, after it took you an entire career to earn that number being retired in your name. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure you meant no ill will or anything like that. I just think you need to look at it from a different lens instead of the lens you're looking at it from. Penn State ain't the National Football League. As much as we respect the Big Ten, Penn State is not the National Football League, bro. It's just not. Let's go to the tweets before we get on out of here. Please show me the first tweet. At Heavenly Buckets, right? Stephen A. Smith, where would Jalen Brunson rank amongst point guards in the NBA if he won a title this year? He rank amongst the best. I mean, he's already a first-team All-NBA player. He's resurrected basketball in New York City. He'd clearly be the greatest Knick of all time. If he delivered a championship, he'd be the greatest Knick of all time. Greater than Patrick Ewing, greater than Carmelo Anthony, greater than Bernard King. The only reason we don't put him greater than Walt Clyde Frazier or Earl of Pearl Monroe is because they won a chip, and he did it. But if he got you to the conference finals, he got you to the NBA finals, God, my God, if he won a championship, oh my Lord. And being in the NBA right now, with what you're seeing from everybody else, yeah, Luka's in the NBA. Yes, Kyrie Irving's in the NBA. Yes, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I wouldn't put him above Shai. I wouldn't put him above Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. No, I would not. I don't know if I could put him against Luka because he was a reserve to Luka, even though I think that he's been just as productive as Luka. But that's debatable. But as a talent, Luka's 6'7". Luka get himself in shape. Imagine. Steph Curry. I'm not putting him above Steph Curry. Now, yeah, that's the greatest shooter of all time, not a 4-time champion. But he'd be up there. Make no mistake about it. Let's get to the second tweet. What you got? At Clark Kent 415, right? Stephen A. Smith, when is it a good time to elevate Steph from greatest shooter God has ever created to one of the greatest players God has ever created? That time is now. He's a 4-time champion. He's a 2-time league MVP. He's the greatest shooter God has ever created. He responds in the clutch. He's an NBA Finals MVP. Now he's an Olympic gold medalist. We saw what he did in the semifinals and this the gold medal game against France. And then last night against Houston, to play the kind of game that he played, only Golden State Warrior to register a double-double. I mean, the rebounds, the assist, the decision-making, Steve Kerr begging him not to turn the ball over, and then finally he only commits 2 turnovers. I mean, you can't say enough about the job that he has done, the kind of player that he is, the kind of way he's transcended the game, the NBA game, because everybody wants to be like Steph because of his shooting prowess, his swag, his personality, how he gravitates and how he gets little kids to gravitate to him, the babyface assassin. That's actually my favorite nickname from the babyface assassin. He's one of the greatest in the game right now. He's one of the greatest basketball players God has ever created instead of just the greatest shooter. He's phenomenal. No doubt. That time would be now to answer your question directly. At Krussi, Krussi 34, right? Stephen A. Smith. Who wins in a fight? 100 sports analysts versus one gorilla? You can pick the 100 analysts. You know what? I've thought about this. And I'm going to go with the gorilla. Because these dudes weigh a ton. And it's not like 100 men or 100 analysts are going to be able to go up to them at the same time. So you're going to get hurt the instant you approach the gorilla. That's number one. Number two, I don't know 100 analysts who would approach the gorilla. I don't know 500. I don't know 5. I don't know anybody. We'd be running for cover, running like hell. So that's where I'm at with that. Firmly believe in that. Okay? So I'm going to go with the gorilla. I'm just going to go with the gorilla. Last tweet. Show it to me, please. At @sport_Midwest, right? Stephen A. Smith. Thoughts on Busch Light Apple. The Busch Light Apple is a beer they're bringing back. I mean, the wrapping looks good. The bottle looks good. I mean, there's something to be said about packaging. It looks attractive, but beer is beer. It's not my thing. You know, Heineken, Busch, whatever. Just not my thing. Budweiser, I get it. I mean, you know, to each his own. Not the way that I roll, personally. You know, never really liked the taste of any of them. Not this one I'm talking about, but any of them. And I never liked the phrase beer belly. I'm thinking you drinking beer, you're going to have a belly, and I'm allergic to that. I don't want a belly. That's just nasty. It's just nasty, okay? But I do like the packaging. The packaging is attractive, and to a beer drinker, I'm quite sure that they would like it. And then if they got a little apple inside to mix with the beer, it might be a little twang to the taste and all that. So we don't know. So, I mean, if you're a beer drinker, you're probably going to try it. Good luck to you. And I'm good with it. But it might be worth a try, but that's to the beer drinkers out there, which I am not one of them, okay? Not my style. But if it's your style, go for it. Knock yourself out. Just don't drive afterwards. No drinking and driving, okay? Make sure you're home, settled in, and you're not a danger to our society in any way, okay? Make sure that is the case. As long as you do that, it's no big deal. You're good to go. Enjoy. Appreciate the packaging. Got to get on out of here. That's it for this edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Feel free to holler at me, same bad time, same bad channel in the next couple of days or so. I'll be back with you. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks again to Ellie Honig, CNN senior legal analyst. I'll see you in a couple of days. Until then, this is the Stephen A. Smith Show. Stephen A. himself signing off. Peace and love, everybody.